So it looks like they just put out notes. They just put out notes for another balance patch. So it looks like this is going to be the official patch. So they're going to roll with. I guess we're going to find out, but I would assume a pretty decent amount of the original stuff, I guess, that we were expecting. So let's see. Their goals of the patch. We've tried, they say, make Protoss more stable on a pro level versus Raven pushes and more able to fight Terran armies without relying on disruptors solely. So this patch should make it so that Protoss players can just battle Terrans more in the open field without worrying about Ravens and without needing a bunch of disruptors. That's their idea, is that you can just kind of fight Terran more. Increase the variety in mid and late game army compositions by reducing the strength of masked Ghost, Banes, and Disruptors. I mean, that is a great goal to have. Banelings and Ghosts are two of the most, abused units in the game, and it's not really fun to watch people use crazy amounts of them and delete whole armies or bases instantly. It's kind of dumb. I never really felt like this was as much the same problem for Disruptors. Definitely a little harder to use, but sure, I'll take it. And make over-specialized units, Cyclone, Mothership, and Fester viable throughout more stages of the game. I don't know what viable means. I use Cyclones to defend. I use the old version to defend all sorts of cheese. The really long lock-on range, I felt like, was helpful for taking down certain types of early attacks, and you could do pressure, but if they go through with the new Cyclone, which it looks like they have, you don't have the 14 range lock-on anymore, right? So you, can't... yeah, it's down to 9 range. So you can't pick off units from really far away anymore. So, I don't know. I guess the Cyclone's identity is completely gone, but they want people to be able to have more early game units to mass, I guess. Bring visual clarity to important units on the map, such as the Widowmine targeting and Disruptor cooldown indicator. So I guess they're going to make it a little easier to see that. And I think that they're putting a bar above the Disruptor when it shoots. I think that's the change they're talking about. Promote more interaction in late game scenarios by making units such as Tempest, Mothership, and Broodlord more maneuverable. I think this is a pretty horrible idea. I really don't like the idea of mass tier 3 air being able to kite slow armies around that are designed to deal with them. But I don't know. That might be the only thing here that kind of seems silly. All these other changes are not necessarily bad. I think you remove the identity of the Cyclone is gone, and the Mothership is just worse, but we'll see. So let's look at what they decided to go with. So the Cyclone is going to cost half as much. You won't need a tech lab to build it. It's losing 10 health, so it's losing close to, what is that, 8% of its HP. It's losing 100% of its armor. It's having its supply drop to 2. So basically, you're going to be able to spam out crazy amounts of Cyclones. That's really it. And they will be able to straight up fight Stalkers normally. So basically, the old Cyclone used to do 20 damage, 30 with mag field. Now it's 11 and +3 versus mechanical. So I guess it's supposed to be a little bit better in TVT is the idea, and also at dealing with mass blink Stalker. I guess they want you to be able to fight mass Stalker with Cyclones. So that just mostly seems like the goal of this is so that you can just mass Cyclones against Protoss instead of making tanks, because I think. If you look at the biggest weakness of Mech versus Protoss going into this patch is just that it's the same thing it's always been, right? The maps are very wide open. Siege tanks are the backbone of any Mech army. So, Hellions can't kill Stalkers. Cyclones in the old patch can't kill Stalkers. So you kind of have to make tanks. And obviously everything else that Protoss has counters tanks. So I think the idea they're going for here is that now that you can just mass Cyclones and A-move them, even though the unit is not as interesting as it used to be, it should be stronger just because you can spam them more. And I think the lock-on is basically designed to always be on. So we've kind of lobotomized the Cyclone, and in that lobotomy, it kind of lost its ability to feel pain. So now it just sits up front and fights to death instead of doing any kind of kite micro. So... but of course, you do need to get an upgrade for the Cyclone to be able to move faster than a Marine. So that's interesting. They want a rework of the Cyclone to make it a more. Thank you, Coder. To make it more all-around unit in all matchups. Increase the viability of mech-based gameplay. I'm not sure what viability means. They want you to be able to fight out in the middle of the map, I think, is the idea. Yeah, Cyclone auto-lock back in the day did not auto-lock on buildings either. That was never a thing, only cannons. So I'm not sure that point needs to be mentioned. A snipe nerf, I mean, ghosts are just dumb. They're really bad for the game. The primary damage output dealing unit of your army should not be a unit that gets canceled when it's attacked, because that encourages turtling and doing nothing else. The unit literally can't fight. It can't fight, actually. It can only pick off. It can't actually trade, because then it gets canceled. So I love this change. I wish they would cut the snipe damage down even more, because frankly speaking, it's very dumb that all of Terran's late game power is in a unit that literally can't fight if it gets damaged. It's quite stupid. It's horrible design. Widow Mine. Drilling Claws now makes the mine also unburrow twice as fast. Again, I'd like whatever the council is smoking. Widow Mines did not need a buff, so we'll just gloss over that. You guys let me know who your dealer is. Medevac. Speed upgrade replaced with Caduceus Reactor increases Medevac energy regen rate. This is a huge upgrade. It is so common in pro games for you to not have any energy on medevacs, especially when you watch high-level players that are constantly attacking. It is so often that you're caught stimming a bunch, or a Protoss player is poking you, or Ravager player is poking you, and those units move faster than Marines and Marauders, right? Unless you stim. So it's all about baiting you into stimming, and I think that this is probably one of the most interesting things in this patch, especially for Terran, because doubling how fast you get that energy up is just, it's so nice. People are gonna feel it. People are going to feel it big time. That's a pretty huge buff for Bio. It might be the biggest buff Bio has ever gotten. I'll say, maybe aside from Medevac speed boost. Interference Matrix now requires research. Yeah, so this is basically designed to make it so that Nathanias always wins TVT battlecruiser rushes. I really appreciate the council accepting my anonymous donation for that one. Hellions. So basically, they don't want you to research ground upgrades. So mathematically speaking, siege tanks with like +1 or +2, always 2-shot roaches. And beyond that, there's actually not really any interactions that happen with Mech versus Zerg with +3. The only one was that Hellbat's 1-shot Lings. So I believe from a mathematical standpoint, there's no longer any reason to get +3 for Mech units on the ground. It literally is not. You just wouldn't do it anymore. Just get +1 air instead of +3 ground. So this change doesn't really make sense. You know, you've got so many interactions in this game that are supposed to be one-sided, and for some reason, the best strategy in the game, making 80 Lings and just spamming out drones and creep tumors behind them, it gets a little bit stronger. So I don't know. Hell, Massling isn't really that good against Mech anyway, though. So why does this happen? Why does this matter? Who are these Zergs that feel like they're being slighted by not being able to kill Hellbats with Lings? I don't know. I guess you can have it. It's a very weird change. Adaptive Talons, speed bonus removed. Nobody even knew that was in the game. Adaptive Talons cost reduced, so we get a upgrade buff for the Lurker. So Lurkers are now going to have a cheaper access to the speed burrow, so that's a pretty nice buff for them. Infestor pathogen glands removed. Now they start with 75 energy, and you can't cast fungal growth as far, but it does 5 less damage. So since the Infested Terran ability was removed, the Infestor has no utility until reaching 25 energy. Why not just give Infested Terrans back? Come on, what are you guys doing? What are you guys doing? This is dumb. Nobody cares about that. Infested Terrans were way cooler, alright? Sounds like you already know what the problem is. Viper, consume damage reduced. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. This is just a massive buff to Zerg. You're giving them literally, what is that? Is that like 20% off? 15% off the cost of consume? That's this to me is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I don't know. Somebody probably was really upset if that didn't get put in the game, but you know, I personally would like the cost of using repair on my SCVs to go from 25% to 20%. Is that seems similar. Actually, that's a smaller buff for the Terran. Broodlord, move speed increased. Again, guys, we don't need tier 3 air units that play around huge map. You know, like so many of the maps have these giant gaps you can't fight across. Like, What exactly is the point of this? To make it so that people can't counter Broodlords with Thors anymore? So you can just like run around them? Really? Are we going back to buffing the speed of everything? Buffing the speed of everything is like horrible design, just so you guys all know. So many problems in this game are caused by people messing with speed too much. Broodlords should be strong, they should be slow, and they should be scary. If Broodlords are bad enough that you think they need a speed buff, just buff Broodlords. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Yeah, no one cares about Broodlings. That's just I think that's just like a cope nerf. Doesn't really matter. This is probably one of the biggest buffs that Zerg has ever gotten. Overlords are now going to be able to get a speed increase without researching speed. So now you can make drop Overlords really early in the game, and they can generate creep almost instantly while getting a move speed buff. So even if you don't have Overlord speed, if somebody wants to do an Overlord drop, now it's just a million times easier than it used to be. I don't think that this really matters in Terran versus Zerg, but I think for Protoss players, this is a pretty huge nerf for PvZ. I don't really know how Protoss players are going to handle this. I guess if you're still opening Stargate, you just kind of keep your eyes open for it and try to catch it. But this buff doesn't really make any sense. The Dropper Lord gets a crazy buff. Yeah. And then Ultralisks, they want people to burrow them. I don't know. I'm going to guess Cats wrote this one. I love you, Paolo, so I just won't comment on it. Hydralisk, speed upgrade research time. So Hydralisks get a buff. They get a buff on the research time. They get a buff on the upgrade cost. So Hydralisks are just going to be better. Banelings are getting a light nerf. I actually think the health buff is a huge one. This is probably the biggest. This is the other biggest buff. If you guys aren't familiar, the Planetary Fortress, it used to one-shot clumps of Banelings, and it will again, because it does 40 damage to the main target and 35 damage to everything around it. So with one armor, Banelings survive with a single HP. It's pretty easy to just run Banes into a Planetary. So Planetary Fortresses have kind of sucked versus Zerg for a long time, ever since the Baneling HP buff came into the game. So it's really worth pointing out that once this patch goes through, Planetary Fortresses will always one-shot the whole clump of Banelings if you target fire. So this will reward Terran players who target fire the Banelings, and Zerg players will have to put in more effort than just move commanding Banelings into a Planetary. So that's probably one of the best changes they could make in this game. So definitely some big swings in terms of what's good. You mean you'll have Broodlords that can kite you to death if you ever play Mech, but you can use Planetaries against Banelings. That'll make Bio a little more fun to play. Air upgrade, there's a buff to Zerg air upgrades, so they're all cheaper now. Zerg Carapace upgrades are cheaper. They made all the Zerg upgrades cheaper. And then, let's see, Protoss Forge upgrades. They made shields cheaper. They made air armor cheaper. They made warp prisms thicker. They made disruptors more expensive, made them smaller, and increased their radius. Yeah. I mean, disruptors are not really a problem with the game, so I don't know. I think other people care about this a lot more than me. I don't really have any opinions on it. Tempest acceleration doubled? Guys, why do we want tier 3 air units that are supposed to be... Like, do you guys understand that when you buff these units, you're encouraging the turtle games that you say you don't want? Again, please give me the address of your dispensary. I appreciate it. Mothership, cost reduced, supply reduced, build time reduced, speed increased, acceleration increased. Okay, so they're making it a little cheaper. They're making it a little faster. They're nerfing its stats though, so it's losing a third of its health. It's losing a third of its shields. It's losing 10% of its weight. So it's going on the Atkins diet. It's losing its energy, so it's like a battle cruiser now. So if you guys are wondering if this is a good change, just think about it like the battle cruiser. It can't get feedbacked anymore. So it can use all of its abilities since they're cooldown based instead of energy based. So that actually gives the mothership a little bit more utility. I think people will probably use its abilities more since you don't have to choose between recall and time warp. So I kind of like that idea. Recall now has 89-second cooldown. You still have 2 recalls if you have a mothership. So I think it can still serve all the original purposes that it would. It's just all of its stuff is now worse. You basically lose the cloak field, which sucks. I think that's the biggest nerf. So no more cloak field on the mothership is pretty huge. Sentry, Guardian Shield, duration increased. Meh, no one cares. Stasis Ward, sight range. Bleh. Barrier will now block the first instance of damage, which triggers the barrier. I mean, that is how it probably should have been forever. Some guy who proxy Void Rays wrote 50 BattleNet posts, and they made that for him. Let's see. Bug fixes. Fixed an issue where tactical jump could place it outside the map. Man, I wish I found that one first, huh? Fixed an issue where you couldn't cancel recharge on a shield battery. The last time that they tried to patch the game, they did break shield batteries for about a week, so I'm a little nervous there. And then there's a map pool. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 maps in the pool is great. 9 maps in the pool is fantastic, guys. Viewership and player numbers in StarCraft are down, and we need to make changes that keep the game interesting and fun. My biggest concern with this patch is that it's going to break the game. I think there's going to be a lot of new bugs introduced. We've been told by community volunteers on Twitter, speaking for themselves, that they do not have any way to validate their code with this server. So according to them, they can only test in custom games, and then when they upload the code and when they give it to Blizzard to upload into the game, they don't have any way of doing quality assurance against the server version of the game. So according to them, they are not capable of knowing what is going to break until the patch is live. So I will strongly suggest you exercise caution going on to the ladder when this update drops, as I don't believe they've given a date. They say today, so maybe it just came out on NA right now. But I would definitely suggest you exercise caution, as the people who are making these patches, while they have good intentions, they don't actually have any way to validate what they're doing as being functional. So I'm sure that there will be some bugs when this comes out, so just be mindful of that. Somebody may be able to, there might be some unkillable unit glitch or whatever, so just keep all of that in mind. But across the board, did they accomplish the goals that they talked about at the beginning? So do we think that this will make Protoss more stable on a professional level in the early game versus Raven pushes? Well, the only thing they changed about the Raven was that you have to research it now. So most Terrans build more than one Raven. Or if the build time of this upgrade is very close to the build time of a Raven. So I don't know. I really don't know. I'm not actually sure that this accomplishes the goal at all, beyond it being annoying. But I also battlecruiser rush in TVT, and now if they don't get interference matrix researched, I win for free. So that's pretty big for Nathan. That's a pretty big buff for me, since Cyclones are worse against battlecruisers now too. It should be very hard for me to lose TVT with this patch. Beyond that, how about the other stuff? Fight in the middle of the map without relying on disruptors. I'm not sure that any Protoss unit got buffed in this patch, right? I don't understand what's supposed to fight in the middle of the map. The Tempest moves faster, and that's it, right? I don't really understand how you would feel like you can fight a Marine Marauder army with more energy on the medevacs. I actually don't get it. I don't see how this buffs fighting Terran in the middle of the map at all for Protoss, personally. But so we'll say that they probably just failed on that first one. Increase the variety in mid and late game compositions by reducing. Yeah. This is great. I mean, you can't just kill planetaries for free anymore with Banelings. That's great. Ghosts are the dumbest unit in the game. Please keep nerfing them. This is fantastic. This is great. Great changes. I think they nailed the second point. Make over-specialized units viable. I don't really know what viable means. The Infestor is not really changed. It's still just you don't have to get pathogen glands anymore. This is really all they changed. You don't need pathogen glands. It's free now. So I don't know. Infestors are still basically the same unit. The Cyclone is going to be a lot worse at doing what it used to do, and it's going to be a lot better at doing everything else. So there's that. Bring more visual clarity to important units on the minimap. They definitely succeeded here. I didn't see the Widowmine indicator. No, okay, it wasn't mentioned. There's actually no change mentioned for the Widowmine indicator in the notes. I don't know if they succeeded on the visual clarity because they didn't actually mention what they were going to do. Promote more interaction in late game scenarios by making these units more maneuverable. I don't understand how having mass air tier 3 armies that are very fast, I don't understand how anybody wants the game to be that way. And I literally just mass battle cruisers to entertain people on my Twitch channel like 5 hours a day. And even I wouldn't want to live in a world where that's the only thing everybody did. So let's not do that. Let's not do that. Okay. And if you guys agree, let me know down in the comments below if you think that they achieved their goals. I think that maybe the only thing they really did is I think they kind of broke Terran versus Protoss. I think we're going to see Cyclones take over the matchup and just be absolutely horrible and toxic to play against. But I guess that doesn't really matter, right? If I'm not saying Terran is weak, I don't think you really care. So, yeah, Terran is going to be OPAF with this update. But let me know what you guys think, all right? Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.